Welcome to episode 36 of the Gauntlet Podcast.
And episode 35 of Tabletop Superhighway. My name is Jason.
I'm Larry.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Rich.
And Jesse's never used to going second there, or not last, so he was totally out of sync. But that's okay.
That's okay.
If you can't tell, this is a crossover podcast.
Yay.
So it's all hosts this time, no guests, and we still have a pile of people.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we should start things off. Jason, would you like to tell us what you've been playing lately?
Let me look at my list. Hold on, I wasn't ready to go first. Okay, let's see. Well, I've been playing a lot of Dungeon World. I have two brand new campaigns of Dungeon World going simultaneously right now. The first one is called Bleakwood House, and the other is called The Dark Shard of Nemrath. We've had one session for each one. They're each planned for about 4 or 5. We've talked about Dungeon World on our podcast a million times. I don't have to. Our listeners probably don't care to hear more about it, but it's awesome. It's a PBTA PBTA dungeon crawl, adventure game. It strives to emulate like old school D&D. I think it feels like second edition personally, which is why I think I like it so much because I'm a 2E kid. But it's great. Yeah, the 2 great sessions. I was pretty happy with how they went. And then Rich and I played Monster Hearts as well. Rich, do you want to talk about the Monster Hearts thing? I don't want to take that from you.
Sure. We're resuming. What was it? A 3-shot from before earlier in the year?
It was a 4-shot from earlier.
Okay.
Yeah,
4-shot earlier in the year. We had. I resumed the same character. There was one other person who was playing the same character, and we had 2 new people who created high schoolers. So we kind of skipped forward. It was not quite an Elseworlds tale. We did continue forward with the general plot. It was super fun to play the Cuckoo again. I love that character. She just gets in so many messes.
Yeah, I was super happy with it. Just so listeners know, in case they're not familiar with Monster Hearts, it's a Powered by the Apocalypse game, which is about sexy teenage monsters living out their angsty teenage lives. They are mainly teenagers going to high school, and they have they're subject to all the, like whims and vicissitudes of authority figures, but they also are monsters, like witches and werewolves and things like that. It's a game by Avery McDowell. The idea is that their monstrous nature is kind of a metaphor for the changes that go on in your life when you're at that age, and the difficulty you have, like controlling your impulses and emotions, right? One thing I did, kind of picking up on what you said there, Rich, about it being like kind of a pickup from a previous series. We had 2 returning characters, like you said, and 2 brand new characters. And so what I decided to do, it's a 2-session run, until we pick up like a more long-term series of it again. What I decided to do was to basically have it be like a session 1 again, like where we kind of follow the characters around, except I made it a session 1 with kind of like a heavier frame. So it was a session 1, but it was like the characters on Christmas break, basically. It was a good chance to have like returning characters, but also like new characters who we hadn't seen before. It was almost like I told the players, how like BBC shows have the Christmas special, like in between seasons.
Yes.
Carry over between, that are kind of like, they stand a little bit outside the main storyline. That's what we were doing. And I think it worked out pretty well. What'd you think about it as far as all that goes? Like, as far as like the continuity, like how'd you feel about it, Rich?
I like the continuity. I actually like moving out some of the major players that wouldn't have fit with this newer group. So I think it was a really wise choice.
Yeah, that was my thinking. Yeah, like a lot of the big bads wouldn't have made a lot of sense in this context of that session. So yeah, it was cool.
The Christmas theme seems like an odd fit because like it's supposed to be like sexy, teenage monsters. Christmas is not sexy.
Christmas is amazingly sexy. Just all you gotta do, Larry, just go.
It's long travel and like foods that make you feel bloated because you have to eat like for 4 hours, and like you're surrounded by your relatives no matter how much you dislike them. There's nothing attractive about this.
Yeah. You sound like I don't know if you guys listen to. So Dan Savage is this relationship expert.
I'm right there with him.
Yeah, he has a thing where he always bitches about that. He's like Christmas is not sexy. Like stop taking a picture of
your genitals next to Christmas tree.
Your genitals and a Christmas tree. Yeah, it's not sexy.
And I'm right there with Dan on this one.
You just don't have enough sexy relatives, Larry.
I'm just not from that part of the country, Jesse.
Oh my goodness. I was just going to say mistletoe, I think is a pretty great thing. But, yeah, then you threw in the relatives thing, Jesse. I think you trumped us
Jesse,
all.
what do you guys do with mistletoe at your gatherings? Jesus Christ.
We're liberal Canadians.
Yeah, Jesse has a mistletoe belt buckle.
Okay. Let's keep going before we earn a different rating. Yeah, Monster Hearts was awesome. I one little detail, just because we play I love to play games with a bit of a wink and nod, and not take things. I mean, some things like, it can be very serious, but also very like, like flippant and like a little bit of levity. And, we started with basically the Christmas musical. The school's Christmas musical was like the last thing of the semester, and our school put on an all-white production of The Wiz. So,
so bad.
It's pretty bad. But I kind of loved it. It wasn't the PCs doing it. It was just my jerk face NPCs, but it was kind of fun because that
gives you something to work with. Yeah. Like the cast party there, that gives you some good times for the teenagers.
Yeah. Oh, that's what we did. Yeah. After it was over, we had the cast party. It was sexy times all around. So
there you go.
Yeah, it is. So
now I'm back on board with your idea. When it was like I was picturing like relatives and a turkey and stuff, like this is not Monster Hearts.
Okay, so that was Monster Hearts. It was super fun. Let's see, what else did I play? Oh, we've been doing the play by post, the Apocalypse World play by post. That's really kind of more your thing, Rich, but I'll just kind of throw my bit in about it. I love it. I really, really love it. This is my first real exposure to play by post, and like I said last week on our podcast, it's just an entirely different experience. I don't think it's a better experience. It's just a different experience, and it's a good one. Instead of having like that, you replace the sort of like kinetic energy of being like in a face-to-face game with someone. You don't get that, but you do get the trade-off is you get just some really, really beautiful text. Like people have time to like really think about what they're going to write and make sure that what they're writing like sounds consistent. Mm-hmm. I'm really digging it. I love my character, and I like everything that's going on. I didn't really say much about it. Everybody knows what Apocalypse World is. I don't think I have to go into all that, but Rich, that was your game too. Is there anything you want to say about it? Or
we've completed in a week and a half 7 scenes. I'm pretty excited about the pace that we've kept up so far. So
I'm behind everybody a little bit because I only post once a day, but I'm okay with where my character's at though. Like I don't feel like I'm missing anything just because I'm going a little bit slower than everybody else. But
I'm glad to hear that. I know you brought up we've got 7 players, so there's a lot going on concurrently with either 1 or 2 people in scenes. You expressed that you were starting to feel like you're getting behind. So this coming up Wednesday, we scheduled to do a catch-up show type deal where we're going to me and Eloy and possibly some others going to get together and talk about all the events, almost like a community radio station newsletter.
I can't wait. I think it's cool.
I like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait because there's a lot of story going on. I mean, we've only been going for a few weeks, and already there's a lot going on. And my character hasn't been too involved in much of it because it's been kind of a solo thing for my character. Yeah, I was a little concerned that I wasn't posting at a frequent enough pace, but honestly, whenever I do sit down to post, I try to make it A+. That's what I tell myself. I'm like, you know what? This is the only time I can post today, so I'm going to try to make it at least enjoyable to read. That's kind of been that's the balancing act I've been kind of trying to do. Not that everybody else's stuff isn't great, but it's just, I console myself by saying, well, at the very least, while I am sitting down doing it, I'm going to make sure it's like awesome.
You're almost like guest starring. It's so hilarious. It'll be like these scenes, people just chewing up all the scenes and everything. And then all of a sudden, Build-A-Bear, his character just comes in and like swoops in, like, bam! Here's a thing! And then everyone's like, oh my lord, did you see what Build-A-Bear did? That was horrific.
Yeah, just for a kids show, he'd like play the neighbor who just kind of shows up and he's like involved in whatever's been happening today, and like, oh, I got a new job in this thing, and takes part for a few seconds and he leaves.
That's it's not quite like that, but it's definitely. I think my character is getting ready to be kind of like hooked into the other stories soon. Mm-hmm. I think my last post kind of like helped set that up a little bit. So, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really loving it though. Rich is doing a terrific job running it. It's really, really
Thank you.
This is like masterclass stuff. Like I think anybody who wants to do play by post, especially like something real like visceral and intense like Apocalypse World, with so many people, they should go check that out. Are we making that freely available for people to look at, Rich?
I will drop a link in the community, a view only link to the folder if people want to go and kind of pick through that.
I think that would be great. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome because I think once people see like kind of how you do it, I think a lot more people in the community are going to want to do it too. So I think that's awesome. And the last thing I played was Dance of the Damned. I forgot to look up the author's name of Dance of the Damned. I usually like to say the author of games, but Dance of the Damned I've played it before. It's pretty good. It's basically the Edgar Allan Poe story, Mask of the Red Death, but like Mask of the Red Death, the RPG, there's a plague going on that's killing all the peasants, and all the rich people have like holed up behind the walls of a castle, and they're just partying until it's over. They've closed the castle gates and the walls, and they're pouring boiling oil on any peasants who try to any plague infested peasants who try to scale the walls, and they're having a party. And that's the setup of the game. And you play with a deck of cards, and each suit has like a different thematic meaning. And so you use those cards to determine who your character is. And then you basically play out scenes where when it's your turn, you target another player with a card of a certain suit, in an effort to like tempt them or to get some kind of control over them. It all kind of depends on what suit you're doing. And then they play a card to resist you, and the suit they play has a bearing on like the manner in which they resist. So the suits just kind of determine like how you narrate your fiction. And it's also got like a little competitive thing going on where you're trying to collect cards to give you a certain type of outcome. It's really fun. The pacing breaks down a little bit towards the end. That happened both times we played. I think it's just because there are too many cards in a deck of cards, and so like it gets a little like wonky at the end. But while it's hot though, the story's pretty good. We always play it really, really like R-rated, like it's like real nasty and like, lascivious and gross, and decadent. I guess decadent's the right word. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's good time. It's super fast. It plays in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's a nice little, like kind of, quick game. It's easy to get to the table.
Sounds like it's a light shade of Shovel Harry Roach, the way it's like rich people trying to like edge out each other in its own environment there. That's at least where my mind went whenever you were describing it. Like, I'm kind of seeing like, okay.
Yeah, except unlike Shovel Harry Roach, it's utterly humorless. Like, it has no, like it's like purely like just gothic, decadent, hedonistic, like classist.
That sounds like it makes it funnier.
Yeah, I guess it could. Yeah, we play it real dark. I mean, like it's just always ends up being really, really dark and like really, because the four suits kind of like really, really dictate like how you can kind of tell your story. Like they really kind of clamp down on it. So the hearts represent. I'll start with the other one. Spades represent the plague or despair. So if you play a spade, it means somebody like has signs that they have the plague, or you play or your scene is like filled with despair. Clubs represent violence and conflict. And then diamonds represent like a scene that involves like excess and decadence and sexual pleasure. And then hearts represent like hope. Okay. So unless you play a heart, like it's going to be kind of one of these shades of gross, right? But it's fun. Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah.
It's a good way to like kind of like, release some steam. You have permission to kind of play really, really dark and gruesome. So good time.
Yeah. Again, I could just I'm now imagining it like people playing goth kids at a club trying to keep like the emo kids out as like that music becomes popular.
It's exactly like that, Larry. You totally nailed it.
I'm sure the designer would hate it if you played it like that, but you'd probably have some fun.
Well, those are all my games, Larry, so I'll let you take it back.
Okay, sure. Things have been extremely busy for me lately, so I haven't been able to plan that much, mostly because there was like a house con recently, so a lot of my local group have kind of like, okay, we've done our gaming for this month kind of thing, and I had a bunch of stuff on the go. There's been a fair bit of board games, and I've discovered that whenever I'm playing board games with my lady friend and her friends, I am always the oldest person. So every board game that's like, the oldest person goes first. I'm like, all right. Yeah, Jesse's usually got that role, I'm sure. In a lot of groups.
Right. If we were playing Larry, I'd always be going first, baby. You just remember that.
Yeah. But in terms of games just in general, like I end up getting pulled into a lot of games at Star Realm, so I can blame Todd from the Gentcast for that one, because he introduced myself to that one, and my lady friend is absolutely obsessed with that. So the biggest problem is if I win at it, then I can't stop playing it. She won't let me stop until she wins, and wins handily.
So I'm not familiar with the game, Larry. Kind of give us an overview.
Oh, Star Realms. It is a deck building game, kind of flavor of something like Dominion.
Like Dominion, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like like Dominion. You're kind of like buying your deck of cards, and what's interesting about it is that there's like it's kind of like a space war, and you're buying 4 different factions of cards that all kind of work in different ways, and you'll get bonuses for having more of the same type of faction in play sometimes. So it has a very like, what is my strategy based upon what's in front of me? It's actually very close to Ascension in a lot of ways, but I've played Ascension before, and I like this one better in terms of its gameplay, and way better in terms of its art. I've never met anyone who didn't hate Ascension's art.
Ascension's art I don't like it either. I'm glad you said that. I've never even played Ascension, but whenever I see it, I'm just like,
Yeah. But I will say one game that really surprised me was playing Dixit. It's a very well-known game, the one where you like put down a picture that's kind of vague and you give like a word or a phrase about it and people put down the cards that they have it or close to it kind of thing. As somebody who plays a lot of games, I feel like I have a major advantage in this because I'm used to like looking at things and coming up with abstract ways to present that information. I don't know if you guys experience this too sometimes in board games where like there's a challenge to the board game and you're like, oh, no, this is not a problem. I'm used to doing this shit all the time.
I don't think I understood the premise. Say it again. What was it again, Larry? Like,
oh, okay. I thought this was like a really well-known game because, like, apparently.
I know Dixit, but I guess I didn't understand
the idea that like the skill set that you need in Dixit is the skill set to like look at something and say, how can I find a way to express this so that some people get it, but it's not too obvious?
But not too obvious, yeah.
And I think that's kind of something that we do in role-playing games all the time, especially like actually I think the more traditional sense is especially true of this, where it's like. The players are trying to solve a mystery, and they're talking to NPCs who know the answers, but they don't want to give that answer directly. So I think this is something that people actually do quite often in role-playing games, whether they intend to or not.
I never really thought about it that way. Huh. Interesting. I'd have to think about it.
I've found with Dixit that I am the opposite because I have forced my imagination to make lots of different permutations work. I could look at every single card, and it makes sense to me. This could very well be the person dancing as a ballerina, even though it's actually a pie with a giant knife in it.
Yeah, I can see the pie being it, yeah.
Yeah, see, there you go. And that's why I talk myself out of every single...
Okay, so you've gone too far.
Yes.
Also, Larry, have you played Mysterium? We talked about it on our cast last week.
No, I've not played that one.
And apparently, so our one of our regular co-hosts, Steve, we mostly do a co-host show. We don't have a lot of guests like you guys do. One of our regular co-hosts, he said that he likes it better than Dixit because, yes, it's this card thing where you're trying to like interpret these abstract images, but it has it's more goal oriented and it's kind of like a group cooperative thing, and so that sort of disciplines it a little bit and makes it more satisfying. Yeah. He felt like it was a more satisfying experience.
Yeah, I'm a fan of cooperative board games.
Yeah,
Other than that, I have been reading Questlandia recently, reading it going, my local group would love this, because my local group just adored games like the Quiet Year. Just could not get enough of that one. So stuff that involves a lot of building, I'm thinking there'll probably be a Questlandia game in my near future. And over the holidays, I'm planning to find people who are looking to play games over the holidays because they don't have family obligations, and all their friends are at family obligations. So I've been putting together people for that.
Hey, so Josh Fox, who was one of the co-authors of Lovecraftesque, he is running one of the games from that Seven Wonders anthology on December 23rd. I know he's got a couple spots, so if you need something to do on December 23rd, you or listeners.
Sure, yeah, definitely throw that out there. What I've done so far is I've just kind of made a Google Plus post and said, hey, anyone who's interested, just let me know, or just +1 the post, and I will kind of put together a group and say, okay, here's who we have, let's see what we want to play, and just very, very loose.
Oh, cool! Yeah. We'll link to that on our end, so people.
Sure,
have
I'll
that. Cool.
fire you a link for that particular post, and it's really just a matter of finding people who have got nothing else to do over the holidays. And I'll be working over the holidays when I'm visiting family, so I've got time.
Cool. All right. Oh, sorry, I'm acting like I'm hosting this part. I'm not. I'm just gonna shut the fuck
no,
up.
No, I guess we should move on to. Let's go with Richard.
I have played a few games in the last week.
Just a few, like a tiny small amount.
No, this in the last week I played a record amount for me of games, more than I would normally play at a convention, actually. I played Stars Without Number with the Gauntlet crew. That's part of the OSR Tuesdays. I also got to actually dig into mechanics for Renegade Jennies and Boilerplate Jacks.
Oh, I want to hear about this.
Okay, this is pretty cool. The way that Renegade Jennies and Boilerplate Jacks is a steampunk and an alternate history Earth where Atlantis rose and Aether technology with, steam technology and people going on to the far-flung reaches of the planet. It's cool, interesting idea. If you're a Harry Turtledove fan, this is right up your alley. But from a mechanics standpoint, the sheet, I really didn't understand that he had built the character sheet to help you with the mechanics. So what you have in the middle for your character sheet, I'm going to grab one out. You can't really see it terribly well because he did it in a very light font. But in the middle of your character sheet, you will have things like, for my character, who's Lo Ling Wu, he has a pneumatic arm replacement, and then it says 2D. Then, if you want to use your pneumatic arm replacement against a conflict, then you're going to use 2D. But what dice am I using? I don't know. Well, to the right of that are your class information. And so then, I'm a duelist, so my duelist is at D8. So you would use pneumatic arm in a duelist fashion 2D8, and that's the dice that you would roll. And you can build multiple aspects because it's kind of a broader conflict. So you're building these die pools of multiple die sizes and types and going against particular conflicts that are rolled by the GM as well. So that's pretty neat. I like that aspect because you could do it in different permutations. I could use my pneumatic arm for the fact that he's a medic and he's stronger, so maybe he can clamp somebody's vein that's spewing blood, and because he has a pneumatic arm, he can hold it strong. So that's fun.
That reminds me of Lady Blackbird. Is that why you like it?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
Should make sure I have you pegged correctly. That's all.
You have me pegged. Yeah, it's like steampunk and it's like Lady Black. No, I do feel it's got a lot more flexibility than Lady Blackbird as far as utilizing your different aspects. Instead of building a pool and in Lady Blackbird a pool of 6-sided dice, here you're doing different die types. There are also a bunch of different things you can do with the dice. Like you have success and failures on each of the individual die types, and you can use them to tag other people's failures. You can use a success to tag somebody else's failure, or to overcome the overall conflict, or protect your own failures by covering them with a success. So it's kind of neat. It's going to take a little bit to get used to because it's unlike any other, Powered by the Apocalypse crap that I play all the time. So it's different.
Right.
But it's fun to learn new things. So I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm totally spoiled. If it's more than like 2d6, I'm out. Like I just hit the eject button.
It's a lot of thinking. So.
No, I'm kidding. But
you don't have to choose from a list though, so that's good. Also the aforementioned play-by-post that we've got going on. I've got another play-by-post. I want to give you a quick update, Jason. So I have this one game. We're calling it Unquenchable.
Oh, yeah, this is your 1v1, right? Or
yes, this is the 1v1 game where I'm playing a high school or a new college freshman who has traveled from the not Great White North because we're with two Canadians, but I think of Minnesota as pretty Great White and Northish. So traveled from the Twin Cities to New Mexico, and it's just started, and it still just went through orientation. And we started that off as freeform and then settled into, okay, here are the qualities for the prose descriptive quality, or PDQ game system. Create the character with PDQ. Well, early in the first day before classes start, they break off into different groups, and this character met someone else, an NPC. And the person said, hey, after dinner, why don't we go walk on a tour of campus? And I thought this was pretty fun. Then that scene started, and I messaged to Paul. I said, hey, what if this date is more like the first date at a 3-date Breaking the Ice game? Paul said, let me think about it for a moment.
Very good.
And then all of a sudden we switched the scene type, and we basically blended it straight into a Breaking the Ice game, and we're on the second turn of a Breaking the Ice game between that NPC and my player character.
It's pretty cool. Yeah,
I like
good.
that.
It's fun. I'm hoping we can find other different permutations to, or scene types or different actions to where we can kind of slide it into a different game system. So
I'm going to tag Emily on that because I think she'd want to hear that. I think that'd be cool.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we make her happy. Played another game of the Star Wars D6, our third session. It's always fun. I love this game in that I go to the StarWars.com crawl creator and I create my own little crawl before every game, and it's on YouTube. So I like the very first thing in the game session is I basically point my microphone at my speakers and I make the crawl creator play the crawl. It's so geeky.
Oh my god, you're such a fucking nerd. Oh my god.
I've been running a lot of Star Wars. I've never bothered with the crawl, but that's probably
it is worth a little bit of extra effort. I tell you, Larry, it's worth it.
Jesse's one of my players, and he's nodding. So
I feel that though. I did a thing once where I don't remember what the games were that we were doing. I don't even remember what the game was. I play so many games, I lose track. But but I did I played like trailers beforehand. Like I played little trailers that were like, oh, I know what it was. It was the Final Girl. And I found like trailers on YouTube to play that were like kind of the angle I was going for in that session of Final Girl. So yeah, it was pretty cool. But
actually, I remember seeing once somebody made a trailer for their game of Paranoia too. So if you poke around YouTube, you might be able to stumble across that one as well.
Call back to Shabahuri Roach from this conversation.
Yeah, that had a great trailer.
That game has a trailer. Yeah, I know. we had Jason Morningstar on, and we were kind of teasing him about it. We're like,
yeah, I learned that. Actually, you know what? I thought the trailer, considering I've done videos before, it's hard to make them look even decent. The trailer's pretty good. All things considered, like he, and as far as I know, he's not a professional movie maker. He's still doing a pretty good job.
Sorry, we cut you off, Rich.
Was there anything else there, Rich?
Well, last but not least, this past weekend, I participated with a couple members of the RPG Geek community. A little challenge called 10 RPGs in a day. I say in a row because I played Monster Hearts before that, so I really did 11.
Shit.
But we played 10 RPGs.
Yeah, it's true.
I did 11, suckers.
They were short, though, right? They were really short.
They were game poems and nano games. Some, one is Valiant Girls by Meg Baker. That was super fun. And it actually uses a deck of cards, but you take out everything above a 7. So that's how they get past the huge deck that you mentioned before. And it was fun because we all facilitated, 3 to 4 each. And so it was like this big smorgasbord of different game types that ranged from the silly to the high action. Like there was one that was called the Republic Serial, and it was nothing but a series of cliffhanger type serials that would run before a movie that continued to ramp up, and everyone ended with this impossible situation. The very next thing is someone to pick up, and this is how we got out of it, and here's the other situation we're in. That was hilarious. To poignant, like a moment on the subway where two people meet each other for the first time, and then the third person has to be the annoying guy on the cell phone who kind of interrupts them, keeps them from being able to talk and make a connection. And it was fun. Like I had never met Jonathan and Jonas who played with me, and I felt like I really got to know them and their likes and dislikes. It was a cool social experiment.
Well, you guys went through something together that kind of like, okay, we got to do 10 games, guys.
Yep,
we're gonna
absolutely.
make it.
It was great. It was a great experience.
No, awesome. I can see doing that. I actually saw something recently that the 200 Word RPG 200 Word RPG contest is probably coming back in the coming years. So. David put a post saying that was probably going to happen. So you guys might have another chance to like grab a bunch of really, really tiny games and just play through a bunch of them in a row.
A copy came from that contest. Actually, that was one of the games that I played. I think Republic Serial as well. Yeah, that's where I went. That was my go-to. I know there are a bunch of other nano games and game poems as well.
I did 3 of the contests this year, and the 200 word one was the most fun, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it was actually made games that I didn't mind reading through to play because I can read 200 words.
Yeah, exactly. I wrote it in 15 minutes. Yeah, nice. And then spent like half an hour just being like, okay, where can I remove 2 words?
That's all I played, though.
So, Jesse, what is your latest Pathfinder drama?
Well, it provides drama every week, Larry, as I'm sure you know and our listeners know.
Well, we should let the Gauntlet listeners know that Jesse is in a dysfunctional game of Pathfinder.
Yes, dysfunctional.
We should probably tell the Gauntlet listeners what Pathfinder is as well.
Yeah.
No, it's a game based on a card game that you used to play all the time.
Yeah. When I moved to Ottawa from Vancouver, I had no gaming group. I eventually met Larry and kind of one crew there, but before I did that, I got in with a group of French gamers there in Quebec, and they took me in as the only Anglo in the group because they play in English. They play in English because the vast majority of the RPG books are still done in English. There was one group which then has split into 2 groups, and they're all kind of interrelated, and all the guys know each other. I kind of know all of them, but just from the games. They all know each other from other places.
Sure, yeah.
We play alternating Thursdays in one group or the other, and members of both groups are in both groups. The first group is run by a guy that plays in the second group, and the first group, one of the players, runs the second game. Two of the guys that are in both groups, the guy who runs group 2 and one of the other guys, are super power gaming douchebags. Like they are.
Love those guys.
Oh, I do. They're super nice guys, and they are probably the 2 best players, and they're both incredibly creative, but they are also the most alike of any of the players. So they butt heads, and the second group where I was last week, the game previous to that, the power gaming douchebags had gotten into well, not a fight necessarily, but had made the guy running the game as mad as I've seen him in 5 years. And the guy just kind of left, and the other guy whose house he hosts it, and we're in his house, he was there seething for, like, he was just so mad because, he had completely derailed all of his plot. And as he said to me, the next week he'd had some time to calm down, and I said, is everything kind of okay? And he's like, yeah. And then there's that parable about the scorpion where, the scorpion takes the alligator or something, takes the scorpion across the river, and the scorpion stings him and goes, well, what the fuck did you think? I'm a scorpion. Of course I stung you. And he's like, I knew I shouldn't have. I just thought maybe this time he wouldn't be a power gaming douchebag. And yet he was a power gaming douchebag and derailed all of his plans and stuff.
I mean, what's the point of role-playing games if you can't win?
Well, exactly. Well, I find it incredibly interesting since I started doing the podcast, because months previous to this, one of the conflicts was going on in one of the games. I can't remember which. And one of the guys turned to me, and in fact, it was the guy who hosts the second game, and he goes, you're going to be using this as podcast fuel, aren't you? And I said, yep. And I said, I certainly am. And he's like, yeah, okay, I thought so. So it's just very interesting for me to, because I don't really have anything invested in these. These aren't friends of mine that I see outside of gaming, but the amount of stuff that's generated. I mean, I mentioned on our podcast that I had gone to Cuba for a week, and when I got back from Cuba, there were at least 600 to 1,000 emails that had been generated from this game, from one of the games.
This is not an online game. We should point that out.
Yeah,
this
it's
is not
an
played
online
over.
game. I'm sitting
This
in
is
the
nightmarish. Oh my God.
in the Ottawa airport, and I'm like, because Cuba has no internet service, so I'm like, I should probably check out my emails, and I turned my phone on, and it just vomited full of email, and I was like,
just buzzes until the battery dies.
Yeah, it went, I went from having like 300 email to like 1,200 email messages. I'm like, oh my God. And they were all from this group with stuff arguing, and some of the guys will have in-game conflicts with it. It's just absolutely fascinating. And I just go and do my stuff and then sit back and kind of watch one of the guys plays every single game. Like, we played games other than Pathfinder, but he plays every game like it's second edition D&D, where it doesn't matter what it is. It's like it's second edition D&D. And I just find it so funny because he's in a large rut, much like I was, where I, only played exclusively D&D for so long that, needed to spread his wings. But yes, so anyway, to make a short story long, I played some Pathfinder, and I will be playing some more Pathfinder on Thursday. And we will see how dysfunctional things continue to get.
All right. Awesome.
Jesse, I always think of you as like an embedded reporter.
Yeah.
So
well,
cool.
I feel a little bit like an embedded reporter at my Pathfinder game where I sit there.
It's good.
We've sent Jesse to the war zone
right.
as Pathfinder.
Yes.
Come back and tell us of this.
I think this is I think in our rather short history of our show, I'm pretty sure this is the first time a Pathfinder game has been discussed on our show. So that's
isn't the card game?
Yeah.
It's the first time.
Pathfinder card game. Thank Larry, who knows my show better than me, apparently. Yeah, that's right. Pathfinder card game. Yeah. I forgot about that. Man.
It's the first time that the Pathfinder game has been discussed without disgust.
He totally missed the joke earlier whenever I said, "Oh yeah, Pathfinder, that game based on the card game used."
Yes. Yes. I kind of want to go back to that card game. Is that weird?
It's
the same way Jesse goes back to this game that keeps abusing him.
Yeah.
Pathfinder just does this. Maybe Pathfinder does this to people.
Yeah, I guess so. My thing is I always say that like the games that we play, when I say we, I mean like most of the gauntlet, like we play indie games, we play story games, probably more along the lines of what you play, Larry. And, But all those games are missing like one key thing that like Pathfinder and D&D do, which is like bookkeeping, right? Like bookkeeping and advancement and collecting things. Like just none of these games do that. Dungeon
the
World
lonely
close,
fun aspect of it.
Yeah. Dungeon World gets close, but not quite. So
maybe we should get a game of My Life with Master going, where the master is someone's like Pathfinder GM.
I love that. Actually, I want to play that now. I want to play My Life with Master with Pathfinder, though, with like Pathfinder.
Maybe we should set that
Pathfinder
up.
Meta thing. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah,
I would play that. I would run that hell. I don't care.
Or
That's pretty sweet.
My Life with Dungeon Master. Oh, that's good.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I think we've gone through what we've played, though. We should probably move on.
Yeah, we probably should.
All track of this podcast entirely.
Yeah, or it's going to be like 2 hours long. All right. Let's go to the next thing. Okay, for our main topic today, we're going to discuss our favorite game sessions of 2015. We have each chosen 3 games that we were super excited about, game sessions. And we're going to start, I think we're going to go in like 3, 2, 1, right, guys? Is that the plan?
That works for me.
Yeah. All right, cool.
I didn't really put them in order, but that's okay. I don't think it's easy to put these in order.
As long as, you go whatever order you want, Larry. I have a number 3, a number 2, and a number 1. So.
Fair enough.
All right. So
we play by our own rules.
Yeah. Okay, so favorite game sessions, and just a little side note, the listeners of our podcast are not going to be accustomed to this at all because we are not normally allowed to talk about game stories, and so this is our one chance in the year without our regular co-host Dan, where we get to talk about game stories. I'm excited. Rich, are you excited?
I'm so excited. I actually pitched this specifically because Dan said he couldn't make this. I'm like, let's talk about game stories this one time a year.
That's right, because we changed topics.
Dan is a cruel and vicious taskmaster when it comes to the podcast. So
that might be helping you in the long run.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah. No, it's good. Okay, cool. Here we go. So, Rich, why don't you start? What is your number 3 of your top 3 favorite game sessions?
Oh, my number 3 in the 1, 2, 3 is you ask me tomorrow, I might switch up the order. There was a series of Monster of the Week game sessions that I played with my intercontinental group of awesome on Sundays. Run by my good buddy Alex, where I got to play Morgan the Monstrous, who's basically inspired by me watching a whole lot of Black Sails TV show on Starz. So it is an emotional vampire. And what I loved most about that session was it was the 4th session. We already had some established history because Monster of the Week, the revised edition, does a great job of establishing group cohesion and also, a little bit of grist for the mill for possible conflict. And I just love that it's such a functional group that has a great, deep, rich history, and that my character, Morgan, one of her mortal enemies, was involved in the plot, but we ended up fighting a demon, so I had to kind of team up with her, but also hate her, and that's always fun. Yeah, I hate you, but this person's worse than you. And then we end up hiding in this crappy Catholic church. Not that it's a Catholic church. It was a rundown church that no one went to, and that was where we went to hide out as this demon was pursuing one of the members of our little group. And there was this decrepit old Catholic priest who were like, "Oh, we really need you to go because you're going to get killed when this demon shows up." And he's like, "What? They're demons?" And he pauses, and then all of a sudden he says, "I knew it. They never believed me at seminary." It turned out it was just the flip of him going from this just pitiful character to, "Look, I have this crossbow. I've had it for years. I bought
He's got all the tomes. He's got all the stuff. Yeah.
Oh man! And he wasn't good. It wasn't like, hey, he's like played by Ron Perlman, amazing. He was still a decrepit old dude who was just super excited to be part of shooting a demon. We're like, "You could die." He goes, "Yeah, but I just want to shoot him once, just one good shot." We're like, "I love you, Catholic priest guy. You're the best." And then at the end of the game session, Andrea, she had an advance, and she actually bought him as an ally. I'm like, yes, he gets to come back.
What game was it?
So that was Monster of the Week.
Oh, it's Monster of the Week. Oh, okay. All right. That's what I thought you said. I get them all mixed up. Monster Hearts, Monster of the Week, Wandering Monster.
Yep. This one was the Monster of the Week is a Powered by the Apocalypse game, which is angled after Buffy and Supernatural, and kind of hunting a different monster creature every week.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds awesome. Great. All right. Let's go to Jesse. What is your number 3, or whatever order you want to do them in?
Okay. I will go with number 3, and surprisingly, it's a Pathfinder game. But we showed up for this particular session, and the guy who was, and this is the longest running of the 2 alternating games, and we showed up, and it takes place down in the guy's basement, surprisingly. Where we normally play in this room that he's done up all in stone, so it's like you're in a little stone room. And
nice.
He's got a giant. It's got to be. There's like 7 of us, I think, that are in this group, and there's the table it's bigger than 4x8. It might be a 5 by 10 foot giant plexiglass top on this huge table that there's a battle mat under. So there's like a 10-foot
Wow,
long battle
that's
mat.
some hardcore
so we can
shit.
have,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
good.
so we can have big combats and stuff like that. But he wasn't in there. He was in the room beside it. And, he was dressed as a witch. He was like in a giant witch costume and stuff. The guy who was running the second game is the focal character for the first, campaign, where he is like a half demon alchemist, I guess, something like that. And, this witch had prophesized various things for each one of us, and we had to go and do something, reach in something, or you had a bunch of different choices that you could do, but we did them all there in real time.
Oh, like
which
physically you reached
yeah,
in?
physically had to go
Okay,
and do
cool.
stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
which was
You were LARPing,
was
basically.
Yeah, well, yeah,
did,
it was.
did you tell him he's LARPing?
You were LARPing,
it
yeah.
was, yeah, like pseudo LARP, but it was quite funny because, nobody had any idea that it was going to happen. He just kind of wandered in and said, follow me. And it just kind of, and everybody
That's
was
cool.
like,
Yeah, that's cool.
What is going
nice.
on? It's like, and if you don't want to participate, there won't be, you can just wait in the other room and you don't get to know what's going on. But it was, and so, and it'll be something else for those that don't want to. But, we gradually, I was like, well, look, I'm not a big LARP, but I'm like, well, look, he's gone to a ton of trouble because he had, I can't remember what he did, but he did something that was like, reading entrails in a bowl. Like he had gone all out with all kinds of elaborate stuff, and his kids were helping him and stuff. It was really quite cute. And he had this giant gray and black wig on, and he couldn't see. So he's, he kept having to pull the hair out of his eyes because he was getting very confused as to what he was doing. Couldn't see because it was pitch dark. And, it was just really, it was quite neat. So everybody had quite a bit of fun. And then we went, that took about a half hour or so. And then we went and played normally. And, it was quite an interesting little session.
Did he respond well to whenever people told him he was LARPing?
No, I don't think any of them, know about any of that. So we will just keep that between
As
the
far as
four
they're
of us.
concerned, LARPing is the stuff that
Yeah.
occurs in the park with people with phones.
Yeah, we will keep that between the four of us, okay?
I feel like my only rule, if you're standing up while you're playing, you're LARPing. That's it. Like that's the
I always run games
threshold.
standing up. So, like if I'm GMing, I don't usually sit down for almost any game. So
You're always LARPing. There you go. You're in a constant state of LARP, Larry. That sounds like
I firmly stand by the stand up whenever you're running games thing, because you can never let the game stop moving if you are physically standing, because you want it to do stuff, because otherwise you're going to just stand there looking stupid. So you got to keep things moving.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Fair enough. Okay, cool. Well, Larry, why don't you tell us what was your number 3 favorite game session of 2015?
I think you're going to like the fact that this was a Dungeon World game.
I love Dungeon World, so I'm down with it.
Yeah, Dungeon World is not my favorite of the Apocalypse World games. I don't hate it. Obviously, I run it a lot at conventions and stuff, but to me, it departs a little bit more from Apocalypse World than I like. So the fact that it reaches my top 3 tells you that this was a really fun game. It was at a local convention about almost a full year ago. It was early in the year. We were running kind of games on demand. Actually, Todd from the Gencast was there because he wasn't living very far from me at the time. And this was just a game with a couple people, never played anything even close to Dungeon World before, like just D&D stuff, not really so much anything powered by the Apocalypse or anything close to that in terms of design. And I had at least one player who was so animated, like people sometimes really get into these games, like they get their first taste and you can just see the blood in their eyes,
Oh,
they
yeah,
go for it,
yeah,
they
yeah.
just love the shit out of this thing. By the end of the session, he was holding his hands above his head. I will smite thee! And other people at other tables were kind of looking over, what the fuck's with this guy? So yeah, Todd was running a game at the next table, and he loved this person that was playing in my game because this person was so into Dungeon World. Todd and I had to go later on. We disappeared to have dinner because we were some of the only people running games on demand at times. We come back and there's this big group of people waiting to play more games. And the same guy was there talking endlessly about Dungeon World to anyone who would listen.
Nice. Good. Dungeon World needs more love in the world, I feel like.
Yeah, because that's the one that no one's heard of.
No one's ever heard of it. Yeah, it doesn't get the love it deserves, frankly. Someone should do a podcast about Dungeon World. That'd be cool. Okay. So Awesome. I'll do my number 3. My number 3 was a game of Lovecraftesque. We've talked about Lovecraftesque on our podcast, but for your listeners, in case you guys haven't, it is a game by Josh Fox and Becky Annison. It is you basically, as a group, tell the story of a single protagonist who is gradually gathering clues and uncovering a Cthulhu, Lovecraftian type mystery, right? All leading up to this like final supernatural, bizarro encounter with the cosmic horror, right? That's the whole, you're just kind of you all take turns basically kind of telling their story in different roles. Great little game. The reason why it was one of my favorite sessions, so it was a Halloween session. It was my favorite. It was one of my favorites for several reasons. First of all, it was the very first thing organized by Gauntlet UK, and I'm a very, very big believer in Gauntlet UK. I think Gauntlet UK is going to be a big deal next year, and I keep flogging the Gauntlet UK horse. I can't wait for that. They're starting to get more games on the calendar, and I'm excited about that. I got to play with some longtime listeners for the first time, Edwin and Issa. They were really, really cool. And so that was awesome. The game itself was pretty good, really solid game, great little story. Here's the thing. The one real like super standout moment, the reason why it made my list was because the story was this young woman in like post World War II, like immediately post World War II England. She was a code breaker. She was now like kind of trying to figure out what to do with herself. And she got called to help take care of a sick friend out in the country. Okay. And she gradually begins uncovering like this mystery, which involved like cult activity in this English town. Okay, kind of like a harvest nature god cult thing going on. Here was the thing that happened. David, one of the players, he plays a special card. The game has these special cards that let you kind of interrupt the fiction or kind of add elements to the fiction that no one sees coming. He plays this special card that basically lets you replace the witness. Like you have to fictionally replace the witness. You kill them and remove them from the game, the protagonist of the game, and you replace them with a different person. And none of us saw it coming. It was totally, it was just really jaw-dropping. It was like he played this card, and suddenly we were like, oh shit, like she's about to die, and we still have, the game has a structured pace. We've got like half the game to go still. But it was awesome. The scene was, she was at a funeral, and the rituals that were going on at the funeral weren't like standard Christian rituals, and she was starting to like be a little like looking around, like, does nobody else think this is weird? And then she starts to like get really upset, and she stands up, and she kind of goes up to the coffin and sees that the coffin is empty. And that's when like everybody in the church like stands up and begins to like swarm her, and she begins to scream, and they put her in the coffin, and we never see her again. That was the end of our character. And so we had to pick up the story with a brand new character. It was absolutely jaw-dropping. Like we were all just, our jaws were on the floor. We were just like, we couldn't believe it. It was really fucking cool though, because then we got to continue the story through the perspective of this other character who was just an NPC before. And it just felt great. It was really awesome. It felt like the movie Psycho. Like if you've ever seen the old movie Psycho, Janet Leigh dies like in the middle, and then it picks up with a different character, like kind of picking up the story. It was just incredible. It was one of those like, you just really gobsmacking role-playing moments for me. Really, really, really dug it. So it's my number 3.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
There's a lot of talking. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it was a cool little story.
You're telling a story. It's all good.
Yeah. And God, Dan's just like snoozing right now. He's probably not even listening. Okay. So, okay, cool. So Rich, let's just cycle back through. Rich, what's your number 2 favorite session of 2015?
Well, anyone who listened to the Gauntlet gift guide knows that I'm pretty excited about the game known as Wandering Monster High School.
And I had never heard of it until the Gauntlet gift guide.
Mm-hmm.
So
it doesn't get enough love. You talk about Dungeon World, boy, Wandering Monster High School gets like 0 love except for me.
Okay.
And Wandering Monster is really the better game, isn't it?
No, it's totally different tone.
I was just trying to start a fight.
Wandering Monster High School is what's written on the tin, Larry and Jesse. The idea is that you play in a Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk type, somebody's homebrew D&D world, except that the wizards, like the liches and the mind flayers and all the major baddies of this world decided our minions are idiots. We need to train them to do their job better because these heroes keep kicking their asses. So the idea is they've set up a high school, and that's all just so you can make an Odd Yug or a Slime or a minotaur or an orc who's going to high school. And so they have high school classes they're going to, like Intro to Wandering, or, it's so good.
How to use potions rather than just carry them.
Exactly. How to use your potions
instead of just carry them.
Yeah. And there are clubs like Henchmen and Hirelings, the 4-H club, which is like Henchmen and Hirelings, and the greater Minds for Evil is one of the other clubs. It's very tongue in cheek and it's super fun. And I ran, character generation and then I think 3 or 4 sessions, but there was one particular, the session was known as the Homecoming Dance. And this is again with the Intercontinental Group of Awesome, because they're super awesome group. And there was a particular string of events, almost like a move snowball for anybody who's familiar with Apocalypse World and kind of Vincent Baker's. Here's how a move can lead to another move, and these things can hit a string of events that are interesting and completely unexpected. And so we had Gracie, who is this freshman Medusa, and she was part of a love triangle with Adira, who was a ghost, who had dated Puff the tragic dragon. And Puff was... I know, it never stops,
laughing
guys.
at all these dumb puns.
Yes,
Oh
it's
right.
dumb and it's fun. Yes, I agree. There were lots of jokes. In fact, there was a part of the game where the Beholder, Rodney, was part of a gaming group, and they were playing, like, office workers in a modern day and rolling dice and arguing over their cube status, and it never stops. It's so fun. So Adira and Gracie and Puff were in this like love triangle, and all of a sudden Puff's interested in the Medusa. Well, they go up to the top of the clock tower inside the grounds of the school, and
To go get stoned with the Medusa?
exactly.
Oh,
Thank you. That's so
I
good. Larry's
can't do a
with me.
symbol hit like with my mouth. Like
We could totally play
Sorry.
this game,
Yeah,
Larry.
yeah.
You've got my vibe,
I'm right
bro.
there. I want to play the gelatinous cube on the wrestling team.
Yes! Oh, man. See, it never stops. It's all the ideas. A failed roll in trying to impress the Medusa, Gracie, by the dragon. Ended up, they fell off of the clock tower. When they crashed, there was a group of punk, popular, preppy kids who laughed at them. Gracie lost her mind, petrified the entire group of like 10 of the most popular monsters in the whole school, which then led to them going to see the vice principal, who's a devil, who then brought in other people who were questioning for who did this stoning. And it was great because it led into all kinds of other people getting roped into one large plot. And I just loved it because I had no idea that they would come that way. It was one of those perfect moments of, I didn't see this coming, and it has led to an entire waterfall of amazing events that were all character related and all had lots of stakes going on. So it was super fun. It was of course, the romance triangle was silly and all of the setups were silly, but there were some pretty cool little moments that were very Breakfast Clubby for me. So I super love that game, and it's on YouTube.
I'm right there with you. I want to try this one now.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I'm really interested in it now. Huh. Cool.
Okay, I'll put it on the Gauntlet calendar.
Even though I'm normally very, very serious about my fantasy gaming, but
Of course.
yeah.
You are balls to the wall, hardcore.
I am, I know. Rich was shocked by how like traditional my Dungeon World game is. It's so traditional, but I love it. All right, cool. Jesse, what's your number 2 game of 2015 or game session?
Yeah, number 2 session. So the now Pathfinder isn't always played by myself. The one of the 2 games took a hiatus for a while, and I had said that I would run something. So I ran Rain, which is a one-roll engine game by Greg Stolze. And all the guys in the Pathfinder group played in that game, which was in a kind of a fantasy, but like a more modern-y kind of a fantasy setting. And they played a bunch of guys who were really wanna-be criminal dirtbag kind of things, but respectable. And they had a front company. One of the parts of the game is you can have a company, a separate entity that runs kind of by itself. And so they had they were like a criminal, not a thieves guild, but they were like a criminal enterprise. The guy who runs the second game, he played their front man. He was a ship. He had a ship, and he was the front guy, and everybody else went with him. Well, one of the guys in the group always does really dumb stuff, and they've known him, I think, for a very long time, and they just kind of wait for him to do something dumb. So
I gather they don't listen to this podcast. Is that
no, he doesn't listen.
You
to the
said they
podcast.
do. Some of them. Anyway.
No, they would likely tell this to his face because they do this all the time.
That's good.
And he'll just do something that he wants to do.
I mean, I keep a running list of who I can talk shit about on the podcast because I know they don't listen.
And
so.
they had to go to a different city, and so they went to the other city in the boat. And while they were there, one of the guys went into the warehouse. There was a big warehouse district, and he went into the warehouse district, and he stole a bunch of stuff. And I figured, well, I might as well add some stuff. So I kind of on the fly said, well, there's 2 really exquisite kind of suits of armor that are big stands and stuff, and they're behind a whole bunch of gates and fences and stuff like that. And so this one of the guys is like, well, I'm going to go and take all this. So he snuck in and he hauled this stuff out, and I decided as we were sitting there, well, I'm going to make all this stuff, like just add some flavor and make all this stuff cursed, and something's going to come looking for this, just as a throw this in there. And they kind of on their own went, ooh, and the stuff was really nice looking, and this was a low magic kind of a thing, and they were looking at it going, ooh, this stuff's actually really too nice. We're going to take it back to our city and we're going to bury it for like a year or something like that, and then we will dig it back up and we will sell it. So they go and they, tell me this elaborate thing that they're going to go, and they've got a coffin, and they go to the, where they bury all of the poor people in the unmarked graves portion of this city that I had developed for them, and we go and put it there and do all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's great. And then the guy who does the stupid things passes me a note, and the note says, after we've buried the suits of armor, because one of them was like, one of them was in silver, one of them was in gold. I'm digging up the coffin that we buried them in, and I'm taking one of the suits of armor, and I'm going to bury it in my backyard of my house. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so he went and he did this, and this was like sessions before that go by, and in my mind I had a cursed, because the armor had been looted from a tomb in my mind, and something was going to come and get it back, and this would have been a future plot hooks. But he, the dumb guy wanted it he wanted an herb garden for his wife, and he buried the suits of armor, or the suit of armor, under the herb garden. And I had this evil entity come at some point, and it took back the suits of armor, and it dug up his herb garden, took the suit of armor, and left. It also dug up the other coffin and took the suit of armor from that and left. And none of the players knew what had gone on. It was just quite, I'm not explaining this particularly well, but it was just very amusing to sit there as both of them, all the players at the table, were confused for 2 entirely separate reasons, as he couldn't understand why his garden had been destroyed, and their people had been killed and stuff. There had been somebody killed at his house, and the other guys went and looked at this destroyed coffin, because he'd also left a note in the coffin,
mm-hmm.
but the note was back in his vegetable garden. So
mm-hmm.
It was all very, very, very confusing. It was quite amusing. It was more amusing for me because none of them knew until we finished the game. And I told them, I said, were you aware that he had gone? And they were like, no. And he never, no, we had no idea.
Nice.
Cause he was,
secrets at the table.
Yeah, he was just greedy.
All right. Let's keep going. Larry, do you want to go next? What's your number 2?
Yeah, my second session also came from the same con, probably like a day before, the day after the Dungeon World game. And that one was Time Cellist.
Oh, I want to play that. I backed
anyone
that one.
familiar
Yeah,
with,
I backed it.
Yeah, that's done by some of the people from the Gencast, and that is where you are playing children who are trying to help a time-traveling cello player to stop. I believe it's specifically Tchaikovsky. It might just be the maestro of Malefaction, whatever the heck his name was.
I think it used to be Tchaikovsky, but they changed it, right?
Probably so they wouldn't get sued.
Oh no,
yeah,
the main character was Yo-Yo Ma, and they changed.
Yeah, but they couldn't do that. They couldn't do Yo-Yo Ma because
yeah.
he was alive. I asked about that. He's alive to sue them.
Yes.
Anyway, But yes, the idea is that there's a cellist who is helping children stop a maestro from taking over the world by changing history with his army of ninjas named Steve. All of them are named
Nice.
Steve. Not the army is named Steve, but each member of the army. Maybe the army as a whole is also called Steve. I never really asked. We played the Roman times. I can't remember all of our things that we were, because there's always at least 3 things that you're trying to change, that you're trying to prevent them from changing about history. One of them was to try to stop. He was trying to stop iceberg lettuce from being introduced and therefore creating Caesar salads, which is, of course, from Roman times. I can't remember there was one that I'm missing, but the last one that we were trying to stop was he was trying to stop the chorus of voices at Spartacus's trial from all being like, "I'm not Spartacus, it's this guy right over here, hang him." That was our 2 goals. It was a fun little game. It was one of the few games I got to play this year. I don't get to play as much as I get to run games. And the reason it really makes my list is not just that it was a fun game that we really, really enjoyed like playing the little games on, but it was kind of like in the midst of this con where I'm running games back to back, and like I get to sit down for a change, relax, and play a game. And it was almost all the people who were running games at Games on Demand all at the same table, which kind of sucked for the people who were trying to be like, hey, we got Games on Demand, but all of our hosts are playing the game together, so they're not available right now. We were kind of being dicks a little bit in that sense, but it was just like the right game at the right time, I think, for that. So, I mean, the game itself was great, but also just the timing of it was perfect.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Yeah, I'm really interested in Time Cellist. I guess the PDF's out now, right? Is that?
Yeah, I backed the physical book, so I'm kind of waiting for the physical book to come because I tend to read them that way. But it might be out. I do recommend it. It's a fun little game. There's not much to it. Like I don't imagine it's going to be a very thick book, but it's very low buy-in. Like you can get. He said he ran it for some people who had never played RPGs before because the con had a thing going where you could complete quests to win a chance at getting prizes, and one of the quests was to play a game at Games on Demand. So you had people showing up be like, I have no idea what an RPG is. Okay, go play one.
Nice.
And he said he had two girls who were like, I think they were like 12 or 13.
Yeah, I remember him talking
about
this. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, they thought it was the best time they had at the con, at least that far. So like, it's easy to get people who have never played RPGs to play Time Cellist.
I always talk about like those little small like group of games that I use to pull out brand new people who've never played a role playing game before, and I think Time Cellist might be a good one to add to the
for sure
to the arsenal.
Also good for kids too. I think that one would work probably well.
Cool, awesome. All right, well, my number 2 game was a game of Dungeon World. It was a weekend long session of Dungeon World, or I guess campaign, but it was the Saturday session specifically that I wanted to talk about. So I do this thing every now and then for a face-to-face gauntlet where I run Dungeon World for the same group of people. We play on Friday night, on all day Saturday, and then on Sunday afternoon. And that usually gets us through a whole large dungeon and then, 3 or 4 levels or 4 or 5 levels maybe. And we have a good time. It's really great. So the one that we did this year was really awesome. I love it. And it's one of my favorite sessions because to me, like whenever I do these weekend long Dungeon World things, it feels a lot like when I played games in high school. And I think all of the Gauntlet, which is my gaming community and my podcast, all of it is just an attempt to kind of recapture like how much fun I had in high school playing role-playing games. Like it's my sad effort to go back to my, to relive some of those experiences. And so these weekend games are pretty awesome in that regard. Just hanging out with the same group of people all weekend playing games. So on the Saturday session, a really cool thing happened though. We were taking a lunch break, so we had Jimmy John's sandwiches and we were eating lunch. And before the lunch break, I had asked one of the players, I said, hey, George, I want to know about your character's backstory a little bit. You've been kind of holding back a little bit on the backstory. I'd like to know just a little bit more about your character, right? And so just so you know, at some point I'm going to ask you that. He's like, okay, cool, yeah. And I should tell you that George at that time was a fairly new role player. The Gauntlet was his first exposure to role playing games, really. And I think he'd played like one crummy game of D&D and then he found us. And, but he's a great player and he's always done really well. So anyway, he like starts telling his character's backstory while we're eating lunch and he's doing it in character. he's in character. He's like relaying this like lengthy history of his character's backstory, where he came from and why he has this thing and this thing about his weapon and all this other stuff. He's speaking in this really like beautiful Spanish accent. And we were all just like mesmerized. Like we were just like totally mesmerized, like watching this. I'm not normally into, people who come to the table with like 10 pages of backstory, and even then, all I wanted from George was just like a couple sentences, kind of explaining what the basic outlines of his character were, I didn't want much, but he gave me a lot, and I'm not normally into that, but I was really into this because he just sold it so convincingly. Like we were all just mesmerized while we're eating our lunch, paying attention to this, and several times we were looking at each other across the table like, Jesus Christ, this is really good, like this is really good, really entertaining. I don't think we have moments in role-playing games very often where one person is like just in the spotlight and being totally, completely entertaining, I don't think we expect that of people, but every now and then it happens, and man, this was one of those times, and I was just really floored by it. It was just really cool, and it was all made all the better because, he was kind of new at role-playing games, and so it just felt really cool to see him really like kind of embrace his character and embrace like the fun we were having and the spirit of the game we were playing, and I really dug it. So it was cool. I felt flattered that he chose to like do that for us, so. It was cool. Good time.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
That's really great.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. And I should say, just so George knows, because I know he listens to the podcast, I've told this story before, and Dan edited it out. So Dan cut it, just so you know, George. All right. So this is my time to tell it. No, we're giving Dan so much shit. We shouldn't be doing that. But he's not listening right now, so it's okay. Okay, moving right along. No, I don't know if he's listening or not. He's a cool guy. We love Dan.
We love Dan.
We do love Dan. Yeah, Dan's awesome. Rich, what is this is it, drum roll. Tell us about your favorite game session of 2015.
Lady Blackbird is my number one game session.
Oh, all right. Lady Blackbird.
I know. I've run Lady Blackbird 30-ish times. This was at VirtuaCon, which is a virtual convention. Haha, surprise, surprise. Held by RPG Geek. We opened the con with it. It was on a Friday at noon. And I actually took the day off and was excited and had a full table, 5-player characters. So Lady Blackbird, for those who don't know, is a steampunk romance adventure that uses a couple of older story game systems, the one called The Pool and another called The Shadow of Yesterday, and kind of crafts them together. You have 5 pre-generated characters that are all linked, and they have some interesting relationships going on, and a very pregnant situation that you start off with, some of my favorite box decks ever to start off the game, and a loose framework with a giant map of the place where everything is set with an idea of where you're trying to get. And then once you spin it off in that first kind of plan that you're going to start off in the brig of the Hand of Sorrow, it can go all kinds of different ways. And I've had it, normally when I run a single like con one shot, they get out of the Hand of Sorrow. But this whole new group, 5 players I had never met before, never played with before. I don't think any of them had played with each other before. None of them had ever played Lady Blackbird before. I thought,
wow,
we're not going to get very far, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Their characterizations were spot on and unique. Their interpretations of the motivations of their character were so exciting to me, even though I feel like, I've seen this I've seen somebody do a Lady Blackbird this way. I had not seen it quite like this before.
You've played a lot of Lady Blackbird, too.
I have played. I've run it 30 plus times, and I've run it for new people. I've introduced probably a dozen people to role-playing games with Lady Blackbird. It's just a game I can run at the drop of a hat. And so being surprised is something that I excite. Mostly I run this as for other people to share the joy of this game and gaming. And to be delighted by the group was something I found super surprising. And we not only got out of the Hand of Sorrow quick, by break, they were past Haven and on their way. One of them had already gotten the true path. And I thought, man, could they possibly meet up with a pirate king?
They're going to get to the Pirate King, yeah.
I got excited, and then by third hour, they're like heading towards the remnants where the Pirate King is supposed to be. And I'm looking at the person playing Lady Blackbird like, I don't know where this is going to go, dude. Because I think Captain Vance has got a thing for you. You care about that? And it came to a head, and then we went maybe 5 minutes over the slot. and finished the game. Like epilogues,
Nice.
everything. It was fantastic.
Cool.
And,
Awesome.
It's one of my favorite Lady Blackbird sessions ever.
Cool. Awesome. That's a good story. Sweet. All right, Jesse, do you want a drum roll or do you want to dive right into it?
Well, I've got actually a drum set right next to the.
Okay.
I could
You want to do your own
physically,
drum
actually.
roll.
I could do it.
It'll sound great. Yeah, go for it.
I was thinking about this, and the two games that I was thinking of for number 1 and 2 were both strangely play by post. The one that I will give the number 1 nod to was a play by post of Barbarians of Lemuria, which was just unbelievably good because I think, Jason, as you mentioned earlier, the writing was exceptional from everybody that was involved, and it was very pulpy, but everybody's character was incredibly interesting. I happened to play a scholar physician slave because in that system everybody kind of has careers, and that kind of conveys your backstory. And I had been horribly tortured and worked on by like mad sorcerers, and I consequently was terrified by combat, was immune to a lot of magic and poison. So I kind of ran around freaking out most of the time, and everybody else played very nuanced kind of trope pulp characters, but the writing was just exceptionally good, and one of the guys played a barbarian, like an old barbarian who was always throwing his back out, and he was always like, he would always go to do stuff, and like he would drop his sword because you can miss, and you can do all sorts of stuff in that system, and it's a very simple system too, which makes it easy to post very kind of descriptive stuff because you can write most of the mechanics and stuff. You can actually write them into your story because it's such a simple system to use. All of his stuff just was really funny, and our two characters got along quite well, and that game. And everybody was playing we had like a guy in England, a guy in Australia, so that the posts would be done, like people would post either early in the morning, so it wasn't ever like bang, 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 people were all in the same time zone. I'd get up and there would be, 3 or 4 posts from somebody, and, I'd post my thing, and then the next day everybody would have kind of caught up. And it went on for maybe 3 months or 4 months, and we kind of went through kind of 3 different kind of story arcs, and then it ended, and it was just exceptionally well written and just very interesting for what it was. I mean, we didn't reinvent the wheel, but we got a particularly nicely made wheel.
Nice. Had you done much play-by-post before that, Jesse, or was that one?
I kind of started doing it. I've now walked away from it again, but I had started doing it. I mean, much like any kind of gaming, I think, if it's done well, it can be great. If it's not, it's as excruciating as anything else.
Yeah. I've only had a good experience so far, so I can't.
Yeah, but I think it can be done if you get the right people doing it, and it's the right. I think there's certain systems and certain kinds of players and stuff like that will lend themselves well to play-by-post games. None of the posts that we did in that particular game were particularly long. It wasn't like you had to go, nobody was cranking out 1,500 words or anything like that. Everybody kept everything fairly succinct, much in the flavor of the genre that we were playing.
Well, I was going to ask, were you surprised by how good the writing was? That's kind of what my question was, I guess.
I was surprised. I was surprised because it wasn't. I'm not going to blow my own horn. I'm for the French Canadians, because we do some play-by-post stuff in between game sessions for Pathfinder, and because I have the best written English of everybody.
That Pathfinder game sounds so goddamn intense. It sounds like the most intense thing. Yeah.
Yes, my posts are all great, but you'll generally get like 1 person or 2 people who are really good. It's like, oh yeah, okay, this person has a handle on the vocabulary or the particular nuance, or maybe it's the particular character that they're playing. They just, things have happened to align with this one thing, but every single person was great, and all of their characters, for a pulp game, all of their characters were very distinct. Nobody had doubled up. It wasn't like everybody was playing, a thuggish, knuckle-dragging barbarian. We had kind of an alcoholic, very old barbarian, and we had a female ship's captain, and we had a thief. We had like a kind of a magic user, magey guy, and then I was the physician kind of slave guy. Everybody had a very distinct role, but kept all of that very pulpy Fritz Lieber. It was very Farford in the Grey Mouser kind of a feel to that game, and I was just, the longer it kept going, people didn't kind of want it to end. So I think it was initially going to have just been one arc, but the guy who was running the game was having quite a bit of fun. So he just did 3 and then said, really, this is the game is kind of, the game is kind of limited. So you can play it for a while, but you can't, you couldn't play it forever. So it was
knowing when to pull the plug on something is a skill.
Oh God, yeah.
It really is. That's a skill in. I can't really speak to play by post, but man, that's a skill in face to face gaming. Like knowing when to say this scene is done.
Yes.
This arc is done. That's a.
Yeah. You've got to be able to self edit, and that's not a skill everybody has.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. By play-by-post, they do have a little bit more time to do the editing part of it. And I'm sure the person playing the barbarian could occasionally email you and ask you what it's like to be an old guy.
Sick burn. Oh, God.
We have to do at least one per episode.
Wow.
It's part of our contract with Jesse. He's on that. We have to make at least one old person show.
That's right. That's right. And 35 of them, I think, so far. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tabletop Superhighway. That was stupid. All right. Oh, well. All right. Awesome. All right, Larry, I'll give you a drum roll. Favorite game session of 2015. Go.
My top one was an Apocalypse World game.
Nice. Okay.
Hooray.
Yeah. It was a local game, and it just happened to have max, I don't run above 5 players. I don't think the game really works that well above 5. And somebody locally was like, I really want to try this. So I set up a game, and they had to back out at the last minute, but somebody else came in at the last minute. So we ended up with perfect number of people. Everybody showed up. 2 people had played it before. Everybody else was completely new, not only to Apocalypse World, but again to the whole idea of playing something a little bit more story-oriented. A lot of them were one of them I'd played with him before in a game of Covert Ops, which is totally not my usual thing. So I'm like, I don't know what to get out of this player. Anyway. But it worked perfectly. Everybody kind of took to their characters really well. We had a good little, we just kind of did it as a one-shot, but even though it was a one-shot, we kind of left off with a lot of things going, I wonder what was going on here. Because I like to leave a lot of open questions when I run Apocalypse World, that person's trying to kill you. We don't know why yet, but there's something going on. And there's a little bit of things like that thrown in here and there. Okay, why did the hardholder of this town want to steal your item from you? We didn't really answer that question. There was a few things that I've never seen before in an Apocalypse World game that also made it noteworthy that I will add because it makes it a little bit more of a gaming story. We had 2 things that I've never seen before. We had a brainer that was not completely malicious to everybody. Because for some reason, brainers are always just the worst people in the world.
That's mine. I'm playing my brainer that way right now. Oh.
Everybody does. They're always just sort of I'm just going to be a mind rapist. I'm just going to do whatever the heck I want to anybody. I'm just going to get... What equipment are you going to get? Well, one of them is called a Violator glove, so I'm going with that.
I'm going with the Violator glove and the scalpel. Thanks. Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, the previous ones I've had even had kind of a doctor's garb, old, medical gloves, this kind of thing was, and a lab coat and stuff. So we had a brainer that wasn't trying to be awful, at least not in that first one-off little session. And we had a chopper who did not give a fuck about his people. They were I'm sort of well, some of your people might die. Yeah, whatever. I swear, he started with a good-sized gang. He might have had 20 or 30 of them die in that session, mostly because he just did not give a shit. Yeah, just throw more of them in there. Whatever. If he was choosing an option from the list of suffer little harm for his people would never be the one that he picks.
I love it when I don't want to interrupt you, but I love in Apocalypse World and also in Dark Age too. I had a little bit of this happen. I like it when your gangs and stuff cause problems, or the Queen in Monster Hearts.
Oh, I always do that shit.
I don't like it when they just all swim in the same direction. I like it when the gangs are just they're just they're more of a pain in the ass than they are a benefit.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
that is something that I definitely try to push a lot. And he, if his people were problems, he would just kill them or get rid of them. He
Nice.
did not give a shit. But no, I had that with an operator in a previous game where only one of his people was stand up and in his corner. That was it. Just one guy. Everybody else was, I don't know if I can manipulate this person to actually working for me. But that guy's good. And that one guy, he had to leave him behind on a job.
Oh.
He failed a couple of rolls in a row. I'm like, well, yeah, your buddy's shot really bad, and he can't be stabilized this way. So if you take him out with you, he dies. Fuck.
Man.
Hey, he said he'd go back for him. We're still talking about that game that we're someday going to do, where he's going to go back and get him.
Nice.
And so Apocalypse World was my number one.
Sweet,
Yeah.
awesome, cool. Yeah, I love a good session of Apocalypse World. I actually haven't played it face to face in a long time. So it's been kind of fun doing this little play by post thing with Rich. All right, well, that just leaves me my game session of 2015. Am I going to get a drum roll? Rich, you going to drum roll me? Well, anyway, it probably doesn't warrant all that anyway. No, mine was a session of Cheat Your Own Adventure. We've talked about that on our podcast a fair amount. Real simple little game, like a one-page role-playing game. Very, very simple. Accommodates practically any number of people, like from 3 to, I've played it with as many as 10, and it's been great. But what it is you're basically using these rules to tell the story of like a choose your own adventure book. I don't know if you guys remember those or not. I don't know if they have those in Canada. But
we just got the written word last year. Yes,
That's right.
what it is the game, like, basically you tell the story like in the second person. I think that's the right perspective, second person, where you say you're doing this and now you're doing this, and then you get to a point of conflict and you go around the table for options of like how to handle it. And so people say, if you grab the stone idol, turn to page 45. If you run down the corridor, turn to page 36 or whatever, right? Everyone goes around the table. You roll some dice to determine if it's a good option or not. If it's a successful option, then that person who offered the option continues the story. If it's not, they narrate your death, but you get to cheat and go back and choose one of the other options, which will always be the safe option. Much like when you're reading one of those books, you would kind of put your thumb on the page, right? And if you died, you'd go back and choose another one, right? So that's what the game is about. The reason why this was my favorite session of 2015 is for a few reasons. One thing, this game came out of nowhere for us. I had read about it, or I'd heard about it on Twitching Curtain maybe, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. That seems like a cool thing I'd like to try out at some point. And we were all together in the restaurant where we would play our face-to-face games on Wednesdays. And we had a great big group. Something happened where we couldn't do the session. We couldn't play the games we'd planned on playing. I don't remember what the circumstances were, but for whatever reason, we couldn't do it. And so we're like, well, what are we going to do? So we decided just to join the table together, and we played Cheat Your Own Adventure because I remembered that game supported a big number. So it's like, well, let's just play this. And so we did it, and we loved it. Like, we fell in love with the game immediately. Like, it was so great. It was super engaging, really fun, just a good time. It's really short, so you can play it several times. And so we played it a couple times in the standard mode, which is kind of like a pulp adventure mode, right? Really awesome, super cool, just a great experience. But then on the third game, on the last one of the night, we decided to switch it up a little bit, and we decided to play using that system. We were going to tell a sad story, and so that's what we did. We told a sad story using Cheat Your Own Adventure. Dan did a great job kicking it off. Like, he knew exactly like where to go to get us all in the right headspace. He kicked it off with a story about a man dying, having a conversation with his wife, and all the options were like we had to offer what we thought his favorite memory of his wife was. And so it was like, if your favorite memory is when you guys met each other at the carnival back in high school, turn to page 46. If your favorite memory is when your child was born, and we would go around, and so that's how the game proceeded. We told this story about this man whose adventure, so to speak, was him putting all of his affairs in order, and dealing with everything he had to deal with before he passed away, because he had a terminal illness. And the death condition, like if the roll was failed, was that he would handle his circumstances like badly, like he would like succumb to despair and not handle it well. And the success conditions were him handling the situation like positively and hopefully, right? And it was just a really, really touching story. There were several people at the table who were just crying. It was really, really sad. And we had to stop. At a certain point, we had to stop and make sure everybody was okay. We had to get some drinks and just kind of gather ourselves a little bit. And then we continued. It was just really amazing. It was made all the more amazing because it was my core group of people, I game with loads and loads of people every year. But this was my 8 or 9 people who I game with the most, right? And we were all just on the same page with it. We were telling this really, really sad story, and it was really cool. It was just really, really neat. All of us have said that we routinely think about this session and the story that we told, and kind of just, it just kind of stuck with us for a long time. So one of the cool things that the game does mechanically is, as the story proceeds, you're more and more likely to get a bad result. But because you can always go back and get the good result, what it meant in the context of our story was we got to see how things might go poorly for him. We got to see how he might handle the situation badly. When he goes to reconcile with his estranged son, how badly that might go. But the game has the escape hatch of well, you get to go back and have the good ending, but you get to see the bad ending, and it was just really, really effective. That game is amazing. I'm really, really on the fence about what I think my favorite game was of 2015, and Cheat Your Own Adventure is way up there. I haven't quite decided yet, but this session was definitely my favorite session, though. So
we'd end on a high note.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Jason.
I know. Oh.
Bringing us down right before the end.
But before we go, and because I don't know what Rich is going to do on the editing end, I'm just going to say that Dan is my partner in crime with the Gauntlet. Everybody who listens to the show knows that. He is exceptional, and I count him among my very best friends. He's just very mean when it comes to telling stories about games on the cast. So that's all. So that's our show, right? This is our show is done. This was Tabletop Superhighway Cross Gauntlet podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want to continue the conversation with the Gauntlet, go to Google Plus and search for G Plus Communities. Search for the Gauntlet. You'll find us there. We are also on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG, and we play games at online games at Gauntlet Hangouts, which is also on G Plus Communities. That's all I got. This was awesome. Thanks so much, you guys.
Yes.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Awesome.